And at this time, the Paragon of Excellence, our next inductor. Paragon of Excellence, the former manager of Ebony Blade, our next inductee.
Joe, thank you so much. Thanks for putting this together. It's a thrill to be around every one of you. But if this night goes any longer, I'm going to start to believe that the predictions about the rapture were true. That being said, wrestling fans from around the world and around the corner, brothers and sisters, rejoice! For on this day of the rapture, the Paragon of Excellence has returned to New England to proselytize, prophesize, eulogize, immortalize, and inductize the Ebony Blade into the New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. Thank you so much. Now, I come at this from a different perspective than most everybody here in that my first encounter with the Blade had nothing to do with the world of wrestling. It was on an altogether different cutthroat battleground, a bloodshed forum known as Boston College Law School. We were, don't hate us, we are in fact attorneys. And I know there are a lot of learned scholars out here, Nobel laureates and PhDs alike. So you probably already know this, but it's hard to find very good friends in law school, and it's even harder to find wrestling fans. So meeting up with Eric, the Ebony Blade, was a blessing in many ways. And the mix of law and wrestling was fitting because there are a lot of similarities between the practice and the art of wrestling. Namely, your success in both fields is based on your ability to tell stories. And that story can take many different shapes and sizes. Sometimes the story is Hemingway, other times Dr. Seuss, sometimes it's what the guy scrawled on the bathroom stall. But as a fellow litigator, I know of very few storytellers in the courtroom better than Eric Darnell Anderson Esquire. And as someone that's been involved in the business, I have not encountered a better storyteller in the ring in this region than the Ebony Blade. Now, it is truly an honor to induct the Blade, but really it's unfair because I could just spout adjectives for 5 minutes and it wouldn't do him justice. The man is incomparable. He is the embodiment of a quote phrased by one of his mentors, Dr. Jerry Graham, who said, "The show starts when you wake up." And for 23 years in this crazy sport, all over the world, the Blade has been equal parts show and go. And when I say all over the world, I mean beyond just Maine to Connecticut. I'm talking about Canada and Japan and Mexico and El Salvador, Australia, Singapore. He opened for Rocky and Drago in the Soviet Union. He was booked on Neptune, but they never sent him the gravity boots. When he made it to this region, those worlds and years of experience was very necessary because this is a strange and frightening place. It's really unlike any other in that the fans are so passionate. They demand excellence, and if you don't supply it, they're going to let you know. And that's especially true in the backwoods, where the opinions are many and the teeth are few. My favorite story in wrestling with the Blade, I only got one story, promise. My first match managing him was at the Uxbridge Rod and Gun Club. And your first match for anybody, workers and even managers like myself, it's a very stressful thing on its own. Now imagine taking that stress and putting it in the middle of a gun range. So this was for the UCW at the time, and the Blade was taking on Tony Ruffo in the Coliseum. The Blade was taking on Gino Martino for the title, and the plan was for Martino to go over. In the middle of the match, they decided that the Blade was the man that should be on top, and they changed the finish in the middle. Blade goes over, wins the championship, and there we are. One roll of aluminum foil and a victorious champion black man, surrounded by hundreds of rabid, angry Caucasians that are armed with live ammo. When I changed out of my soiled Kevlar that night, I knew that we had something special. Now, the Blade came here later in his career, so he embraced the role of a mentor to so many of us coming up and finding our way in the business. And that was a real blessing to all of us, not all of us, most of us, that he was able to impart his experience, his ability to connect with the crowd, and his enjoyment of performing. Others of us who weren't as respectful, he was more than happy to share the sugar hold. At the end of the day, the man is old school and demands respect. Now, those of us that have ever shared a locker room with the Ebony Blade know that he best exuded his excitement for the sport of wrestling through his sermons. And I'm not going to sermonize for you tonight. I'm going to leave that to the son of the preacher man himself. But I am going to ask you to rise up with your hearts. I'm going to ask you to raise your hands and wave them in praise. Thank you. This is a great, thank you. Those three. Wave them in praise. I'm going to ask you to wish this man a happy birthday. His birthday today. And I'm going to ask for a hallelujah from the congregation. Because for the Ebony Blade, this is your time. Please welcome the master of the sweet science, the badass black Brit, the English enforcer, the son of a preacher man, and tonight, the newest inductee into the New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, ladies and gentlemen, the Ebony Blade!
First of all, thank you very much. I was not exactly sure what to say. One thing I do promise though is that I don't talk over anybody. Like Joel Davis said, it took 21 years to get here. For me, it was 23. I broke in 1983. I was 13 years old in middle school when I was at Gilariana's gym in Los Angeles, which was over a garage. Then later on, met a variety of individuals in LA. And then from there, I started falling in love with this business. There was a point when I knew I might fall in love with it in 1980, when I was visiting friends out here back east, and I'd already seen from family across the country, wrestling in the South and the Midwest. And I remember watching a match that involved Mr. Gurria and Mr. Martel, that very same match that Joel had already mentioned, when I noticed that perhaps some of the blows weren't quite as full as I thought they were. When I noticed that the head didn't quite hit the turnbuckle like I thought. And what hit me then was that I didn't care. I didn't care if it was a work. All I knew that there was something special about it. It's funny because I think about Michael Jordan when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I remember that this great athlete stood up there and he took that time to settle grudges, to dish out some dirt. And I think that I can't do that. I can't do that because, first of all, God knows I never had that kind of talent in this business. I wasn't that great. Maybe Jordan feels it's okay because he's one of the greatest. I was never the biggest, I was never the strongest, I was never the swiftest. But the second reason I can is because I have no axe to grind, I have no scores to settle, I have no problems. This business gave me far more than I ever gave it. Since 1983, I've been a student, I've been a school teacher, I've been an actor, I've been a singer, I've been a lawyer, yet through it all, professional wrestling was still a strong part of who and what I am. Now you're going to hear me say the word wrestling on numerous occasions because I know there are some people who want to stop saying that word wrestling, and I'm not going to. Because there's something special about professional wrestling. It is unlike any art you have ever seen. It's unlike anything you've ever done. And when people ask me, do the people in your life know that you were involved in professional wrestling? And I say, it's almost at the top of my resume. Because everything I've learned and I've applied, I learned in wrestling. I learned in this business, you are only as good as the people you work with. And when they make you look good, you give credit. So when, during the time, and I've tried over 100 trials, I have won 89.3% of the trials I've tried, and at the end, I've always said the reason I won is because I had great police investigators, I had great victim witness advocates, I had great people working with me. They built the stage, all I did was run the play. And I learned the same thing in wrestling. It was the people who made me, more than anything else. I have to give some quick thanks. Joe, thank you very much for this incredible honor. As I said, I spent only 7 years out of the 23 years I was in the wrestling business here, but I never had more fun than when I was in New England. Never had more fun. I want to thank my teachers, and when I say that, some people think that who I mean are Gil Ariano, Vandal Drummond, Billy Anderson, Jesse Hernandez, Bobby Bold Eagle, Don Diamond, Gene LaBelle, and Dr. Jerry Graham. But there are other people who I mean by that. If there's anybody here who I ever had a match with, would you please stand? If there's anybody here who I ever had a training session with, would you please stand? If there's anybody here who I ever had a conversation about professional wrestling with, would you please stand? Ladies and gentlemen, these are all my teachers. These are all people who made me who I am, because one who teaches is forever a student, and one who is a student will learn to teach. I thank each and every one of you for making this special for me during the time I was in it. Thank you. It's funny, Tom saw me at Slammer's Wrestling Gym when I was about 17 years old. About 17 years old, like this.
You were thinner then.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things, you know, the Paragon asked me to go ahead and list all the championships I'd won. And I didn't want to say it because I knew there'd be words said about me that was said then that would never be said again. Words like cruiserweight and welterweight, you know, junior heavyweight, you know, things that I just have not seen in a long, long time. I have to thank, one, the person who made me in New England, Bad Boy Billy Black. Bad Boy Billy Black is about as smooth as you can get in wrestling, and he came in and we were putting a program right away. Someone said that maybe it'd be a good idea for Billy's run to end, for mine to take over, and he was the most unselfish individual in doing that. And to this day, he is someone who I can always count on, and wrestling with him, I'd come out of retirement for it to do it every day, I really would, so I thank him for that. I have to thank the managers I worked with, the Paragon, obviously. Also, an individual who I met at the school I used to work at in Brooklyn, New York. I met him by the name of Joel Gertner. Joe was my manager for a while out in New York. Also, my tag team partner. I had the pleasure of knowing William Billy Firehawk Hawkins. And in New York, I can tell you now, I've never had anybody in this business who ever watched over me and loved me like Billy Firehawk did. Billy, unfortunately, is no longer with us. But whenever I felt like I just didn't think enough of the business, I could see his face light up and how much he loved it. And the great thing about being with him was that I got to love it again too. And I thank him for that. I want to thank Anthony Rufo, being the first person in New England who hired me for a gig here. I want to thank as well the people who I saw and who I learned from, the great talkers. I learned from great talkers. Someone asked me, why were you so good on promos? I said, because I saw Jerry Lawler in Memphis, because I saw Piper in LA and Georgia, because I saw Flair in his prime, because I saw Funk in his prime, because I got to see Dr. Jerry Graham, because I got to see the people who were allowed to let their personalities come out, because we all know what really makes the connection is how much that audience feels you matter. And I learned it from them, how to go ahead and open my mouth, and perhaps you might show up and you may pay a ticket. And I thank them for that. I see today, of course, the legends who've already been mentioned. Strongbow, who, of course, in 1983, I saw the first WWF broadcast in LA when he and his brother were brought out as tag team champions. And I saw the dance. Part of that I would later modify. I should mention, I've stolen from every last wrestler I ever saw. Every last one of you I have stolen from at some point. There's no question about it. I've also learned as well in this business that sometimes when you lose, you win. I'm not going to tell stories. If you want to ask me a story, I'll be happy to talk to you about it later, especially if it involves Dr. Jerry Graham and what a deal. I will. Can't say it in front of children. But also, as I want to wrap this up, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, I do want to say that this has been a beautiful experience for me. And I don't just mean the Hall of Fame. I mean being connected to this business. Being connected to something in which on a regular basis you try and get better. On a regular basis you ask yourself, how could I have done it better? On a regular basis you meet people. I'm a historian. I was a history teacher. And then from a history teacher I became a lawyer. We believe in precedents. We believe that what came before us is important to what will happen next. And in this business, I miss the fact that I used to be able to sit here and tell you Tito Santana was the 5th person to hold the Intercontinental title. I miss being able to say that. I miss titles that flip. I miss the fact that now we have titles that will flip on a dime. I remember when it meant something. I told Ricky earlier, I remember when I found out that he beat Jumbo Tsuruta and it meant something. It was great because you saw somebody who you believed in, who you cared about, who you wanted to be a part of, who had that dream. And how many of us in our own lives strives to own that business, buy that house, find that girl, raise those kids? That's what people connect with. They don't connect to vignettes. They don't connect to the jokes. They don't connect to that. They connect to the passion. And in this business, one of the things I have always loved was that this was about passion. This was about heart. This was about greatness. And I sit here now and I think about the Hall of Fame. And when you say Hall of Fame, you think one of the greats of all time. And I don't think I am one of the greats of all time. Not even close.
You are in this state.
Thank you. But what I am grateful for is that somebody thought that I should be a part of New England Pro Wrestling forever, which is appropriate because New England Pro Wrestling is going to be a part of me forever. I thank you.